Welcome back. Dayo Additional, I beg your pardon, the chairman, Nigeria Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association, joins me now to continue talking about developments in Nigeria's oil and gas industry, of course, with reference to so many of the other issues that Bosun, mentioned while we're speaking. Good morning to you, Mr. Additional. Thank you for coming on the program.
Good morning.
It's always great to have you on the show. You listened to the conversation I had with Bosun. Yes. We're talking about so many millions, trillions of naira being lost because of the petroleum industry bill that is still hanging in the balance. There's been a lot of conversation at the Senate, at the National Assembly with regards to the passage of the petroleum industry bill. But what is your view on this delay?
Well, I mean, if they can pass it as quickly as they say they will, then that would solve a whole lot of problems. But my question is, which of the PIBs? Because we know that one went in originally, and there's been several versions. Now, if they're dissecting it and taking certain parts of it to even start the process, then that's fine. On the long run, that would create a bit more stability with investment coming into the country, because what has held back the industry in the last 5-6 years is no clarity in the direction that the government intends to go with the industry. So that bill is really essential that it gets passed. Then people have an idea of what taxes they're going to pay, what royalties will come to the government, and then it makes for better planning. You'd have new drilling campaigns, we hope. I mean, a lot of the onshore ones have gone offshore. And essentially, a lot more players would be able to come in knowing fully well that they're guided by some certain laws. As you know, a lot of the laws that we have in the oil and gas sector, well, are mostly oil laws that were done in the 60s. There's been no clear-cut one for gas specifically. And so something needs to be done, and I hope that they're able to do something very quickly, and we can see that. So
hopefully, if they do entrench, gas laws into this particular PIB, what concerns do you think should be the focus in putting together these policies?
Well, the gas laws that we're hoping for would be one that would stimulate the industry to make more investments, because really and truly, I mean, we have 187 TCF of proven gas, and we have over 600 TCF unproven. So a lot of the gas that you see now currently is mostly associated gas, which was found when they were looking for oil. Now they need to actively tap the ones that haven't been explored, and that's where whatever bill or whatever laws come into would guide and make investors more comfortable to come into to play.
Now, the National Assembly is actually looking at reviewing the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Act. What's your view on this? Do you think it will also help? It should help in terms of increasing investment into that aspect of the industry.
You're talking about the LNG Act?
Yes.
It will be counterproductive if they tamper with that act. And I'll tell you why. A lot of investment that went into LNG from the Nigerian government was backed up by foreign players, Shell, Total, Ajib. And the guarantees that allowed these investors to come in was basically because of the NLNG Act, because at that time, no one was ready to invest in the country. IFC was part of this whole transaction, and they pulled out. So a lot of these companies needed guarantees to be able to take part in the LNG scheme. And the LNG Act gave them guarantees, because with LNG, your buyer would need a 25-year guarantee that you can supply. The same way the seller needs a 25-year guarantee that you would buy. So those contracts are actually signed before the plants are actually even built. Now, the comfort that the LNG Act gave at the time was that the way the transactions were done, there would be no interference from the government, and it would protect this investment. And as you can see, the investment has paid off handsomely for the government. From investing about $2.5 billion, they've received over $33 billion from that investment. So tampering with the act now would send the wrong signals to the international community, because you gave your word to say we're going to protect this investment, we're giving you this leeway, and then now because of one government agency you want to tamper with that act. That's going to send the totally wrong signals. And then don't forget, I mean, they're looking at Train 7 and Train 8, the same investors. You have Brass LNG, you have OKLNG, whose investors are still sitting on the fence. The minute you do that, then you're sending the wrong signals to them. If you look at what LNG has done, I mean, I read part of the opening speech of the person moving for this to be done. And he's saying that there's been an injustice created by NLNG. But that's not true. I mean, you had well over 60% gas flaring. Because of NLNG, that has come down to about 20%. Essentially, there was a situation created where people who had the gas that were flaring them could now process the gas and send it to NLNG to process. NLNG doesn't flare gas or produce gas. They process, so they're like a refinery. They process the gas and then sell. So if you tamper with that act, then you're sending a whole lot of signals. I mean, it's just going to make nonsense of the president's travels all over the world trying to get investors to come in, because what you're saying is you can't guarantee that investment will not be tampered with.
So why do you think the National Assembly wants to repeal the act based on this argument that you've just made? Because it seems as if the NLNG Act is for the good of both parties who will be involved in these transactions, the international investors as well as the federal government. So why do you think now they want to amend this act?
Well, I don't want to get into the political side, but I mean, it's clear. A company, I mean, NLNG bailed out the country when they paid that $200 and something million last year. And that's what was shared between the states and got a bit of stability from the government side that was broke. Now, of course, somebody thinks, wow, so this entity can actually pay this kind of money, so they must be making a hell of a lot of money. We must get a part of that pie. Forgetting that the investors or the shareholders in that entity are already paying taxes to the government. So it's going to amount to double taxation if they pay separately to the NDDC. So what you're saying is, because you want NDDC to get part of that money, you change the act. It's going to send wrong signals. So what happens when PPPRA also wakes up and says, we want part of that money for something else? I mean, you now change the act to suit that one as well. If you look at a lot of the free trade zones, they don't even pay any taxes whatsoever. They're exempt completely. And yet this is an entity that is paying its taxes. The CSRs that they do is well over $200 million a year. And in fact, today, the only reason why we have LPG in the country is because almost 90% of the supply comes from them. So it's, I think it's ill-advised, and I think the committee should take another look at what they're trying to do, because really and truly, I wouldn't say as small as that little incident is, it's going to create huge problems for the country.
So in looking at that now, how would you rate the relationship between, you already mentioned LPG, how it's benefited a lot from this act, the relationship between NLNG, LPG?
Well, I mean, like I said, if it wasn't for LNG back in 2007, when the refineries, I mean, went south, LNG came to a rescue when the government called on them to supply LPG to the domestic market. And from 150,000 tons that they were supplying, they've increased that to 250,000, and they're ready to go as high as 1 million. Now, it's even more important for the government, especially now that the president has signed off to reducing global greenhouse gas emissions by 20%. Desertification is a big problem, which 19 states of the north are suffering. And the president is looking at using LPG to solve that. Now, the bulk of the LPG that we enjoy comes from NLNG. So if you tamper with that act, NLNG decides to start paying if they're forced to, and we hope they're not, and that the act is not tampered with, then LPG becomes increasingly expensive.
Let's talk a little bit about this government policy that earmarks a percentage of gas production for domestic market. How effective is this policy?
Well, like I said earlier on, we have over 600 TCF of gas that is unproven, and we have 187 that's proven. You need a policy that would drive the production of gas the way people like Qatar have done. Qatar gets over 100 billion a year from gas because it was able to harness its gas resources and put gas processing facilities in place. And that needs to happen here. Why are we suffering in the power sector today? Because a lot of the gas utilization projects that were supposed to have been carried out in the last 5-6 years haven't been done. So there's a whole lot of problems that we need to address, which gas essentially solves. And this is a baby that needs to be well looked after and pampered such that it is nurtured and starts to do what it's supposed to do.
Just before I let you go, is LPG subsidized?
No, it's not, and we hope it wouldn't be, because it doesn't need to be.
Why not?
Well, it's a free market product. I mean, kerosene, you can see what happened to kerosene when it was subsidized. Nobody ever got it at the price it was supposed to be. And we have more than enough LPG being produced in the country. What we need again is the government to fully come on board and say, this is the choice fuel for the country, and then we can have investors come in, and a lot of the infrastructure problems that we're facing now, which is more from the government side, is resolved. But we're talking, so we know that it will be.
Oh, Mr. Adesina, I'm very sure that's a very debatable one. And a lot of debates will start with regards whether LPG should be subsidized or not. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning and sharing your perspectives with us.
Thank you.
Business Morning continues in just a moment. Stay with us.